Hello, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland. This video is aimed at people from South Asia, like Pakistan, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and so forth. It's friendly advice. I urge you not to go to the Russian Federation to work. I'm not ordering you. I'm just giving you counsel. You do what you want. But there's been increasingly tendency reported in the media over the last few weeks of Russian firms to try to recruit workers from South Asian countries. Why? That's because they used to get an awful lot of guest workers from former Soviet republics like Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. And that is largely dried up in the last 5 years because they're often treated so appallingly with such racism and violence. Often they are coerced into going to join the Russian army, getting killed in Ukraine, treated like dirt, not paid the salaries promised, harassed by the police. There's a list of regulations for as long as their arm. They're on some sort of police database. If they're in trouble, they don't know what's happening. They're just powerless. It's a bureaucratic nightmare. Now, I'm not saying all Russians are bad. Absolutely not. Some are fantastic. And no, not all Russians are racist. Some of them will be just as sickened by racism as I am. But I'm sorry to say that frank racism is more widespread in Russia than in most other countries, certainly in anywhere else in Europe. So since the Crocus City Hall attacks of a year ago, there's been increased police violence and harassment against people from Central Asia, like Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and so forth. Thank you, Paramount, which is why many Uzbeks and so forth, they're going to Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, even going to China, going to Kazakhstan. Even though wages not as high as Kazakhstan, they don't face such racism. The cost of living is lower, it's much closer. They can get there from home by train or bus. They don't have to fly, and so forth. So, yeah, contracts are not worth the paper they're written on in Russia. Often, you'd be paid half the salary you're promised, if you're paid it at all, paid hugely in arrears and things like that. So, Ozone, which is Russia's major online marketplace, they are trying to get workers from abroad. Now, only about 20% of Russians can speak English to a decent level, a bit higher in Moscow. So people are hired to work in factories and warehouses, things like that. And don't believe the propaganda advertising to get you to go there. There's particularly a lot of anti-Muslim prejudice. Even about 12% of Russian citizens are Muslim. So if you're a practicing Muslim, you will attract a lot of attention. Now, I know Putin plays both sides of the street on this, pretends to be a friend of Islam, and then calls anyone an Islamic extremist if he or she is a Muslim who happens to disagree with Putin on anything. So nobody lies as much as the Russian government lies. That's the topsy-turvydom. Only they will claim that up is down. I know every government lies, but their lying is just off the scale, and so on. So there'll be long hours, no health and safety at work, no rights, no right to strike or things like that. So the law is very much on the side of the employer. If you did have a dispute with your lawyer, with your employer, how would you even hire a lawyer? It's extremely expensive. You couldn't even get a legal action going. Even Russians don't trust Russian courts, which is why Russian companies would sign contracts with each other saying this contract is governed under English law and we adjudicate in the courts of England or some other Western European country, because it could take 10 years to get a result. You couldn't be sure of the outcome, even if justice is completely on your side, because the other side would have political connections or just money to bribe the judge. So your rights, you'll be unable to assert your rights. Your rights will not be upheld. And so you'll be treated by like dirt. So anyway, they of severe labor shortages. You've got to ask yourself why. So that's why they're trying to recruit tens of thousands of people from abroad, North Korean people as slaves who are paid below the minimum wage in Russia. Even then, a lot of their salary goes to the North Korean regime. Health and safety at work doesn't really exist in Russia, and so forth. Okay, so some laborers from these other countries are deeply unhappy about the situation. So being told you won't have to pay for visa sponsorship, but I mean, I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't trust it. So there are problems with the people not being paid. Very, very difficult to remit your salary if you want to support relatives or friends back in your home country, because of course Russia's been cut off from SWIFT, the international financial system for sending and receiving money. And remember, People were told they're going to be security guards. They're going to Russia. They were duped. They were passports taken off them. They were helpless in a country they didn't speak the language, didn't know anybody. Given uniforms, forced to join the Russian army, sent to Ukraine to get killed. They've done this to Indians, certainly, well over 100 Indians. Now, Narendra Modi has a cordial relationship with Vladimir Putin, has visited him since the war began, managed to get most of them repatriated, but there are still some Indians against their will fighting in Ukraine in just hellish conditions, inadequate clothing, inadequate shelter, inadequate rations and weapons and so on, just cannon fodder. Likewise, Nepalese, some of them been lucky enough to be captured by the Ukrainians. At least they're still alive, going to be adequately fed, housed, and given medical care. And one of the Nepalese said, and I heard them saying, send the Nepalese first. Just they can stop a bullet and be a decoy when the Russians are going for the real attack and things like that. Because obviously Russia's having real difficulty recruiting men for its meat grinder, its illegal war of unprovoked aggression against Ukraine. So that's why they're trying to get people from other countries to do it. And some Pakistanis attempt it because the economic situation is so cataclysmic in Pakistan right now, but you may well regret it. Some of the Nepalese who went because of the tough economic circumstances of their country came to bitterly rue the day that they signed these contracts. So because the Russians don't want to conscript too many of their own people, they want too many of their own people killed. They want the Russian nation to survive. Moreover, it's unpopular. They want mass demonstrations. So they just view people of other nationalities as disposable, particularly non-white people. So even when I lived in Russia, even as an Irishman, and we've never had any dispute with the Russian Federation. I found it difficult to rent a flat. Some people were refusing on the basis of my nationality. I got one in the end. And if you're non-white, it'll be even more difficult or difficult to get a taxi to pick you up and things like that. So there are some Russian neo-Nazis who are more than coddled by the Putin regime. So I'm afraid to say it'll be very difficult for you. You're better off not going. Okay. I mean, there are some wealthy Indians who live in Russia. There's that Indian school, and so some Indians find life pleasant there. But if you're not wealthy and well connected, it can be very unpleasant indeed. So expect to be kidnapped, frankly, forced to join the Russian army, go there. And so there are lots of harrowing tales of woe of people from Pakistan, India, Nepal, and so forth who went to the Russian Federation to work and became to regret it. And there it is cold. I mean, ferociously cold in winter. It'd be warmer in your freezer than it is out on the street. So that will be very, very difficult to cope with. So I would recommend that you don't go there, particularly at the moment, because of what is going to happen to you. If you're Indian and you're forced into the Russian army, you got some chance of getting out because your government's got some sway. Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, the Russians really don't care. They will lie and lie and lie to your face and coerce you. And they don't respect the government of your country, so they're not going to let you out. So stay safe. It's better to be poor and alive. Right. Thank you so much for watching your channel. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, donate on PayPal, georgecallahan79 at gmail.com. Goodbye.